Hi everyone, hope you're doing good. Welcome back to the Mind Oracle. Today we are going to be covering the different factors that affect eyewitness testimony. For the specification, there are three main factors that you need to know of, which are leading questions, post-event discussion, and anxiety. Today we're going to be covering leading questions. We will cover anxiety and post-event discussion in the following videos, but for this one we're just going to be focusing on leading questions to make it more concise, and we're going to be focusing on key definitions that you need to know, as well as research and of course the evaluations for the theory. So first of all, we're going to be looking at the key definitions that you need to know for this specific topic. Now, the first one is eyewitness testimony. This is essentially evidence that is provided in court by an individual who has witnessed a crime, who has been there at the scene of the crime while the event took place, with a specific view to identify the perpetrator or the criminal. This plays a really huge role in criminal investigations. And now for more specific definitions, misleading information is when you supply information or supply knowledge that may alter witnesses' memory of a crime. Leading questions are queries that suggest a certain answer because of the way that it is phrased. So, for example, there is a difference between asking what colour t-shirt was the criminal wearing and was the criminal wearing a blue t-shirt. The second question would be a leading question because it's subtly implying that the criminal was wearing a blue t-shirt. And this is quite dangerous within the context of an investigation when you're trying to find the criminal, because the eyewitness could feel like that the criminal was wearing a blue t-shirt, even though that's not what they actually remember. But because of the way that the question is phrased, they get confused and then end up giving information that isn't true to what they actually remember or what they actually saw, which can seriously impact the results of an investigation and lead to either the criminal not being found or the criminal not being found and someone else getting persecuted instead, both of which aren't good for the people involved and for society as a whole. Okay, so now we're going to be going into the specific research that went behind this. So, what happened was a group of participants were asked to watch a film of a car crash, and then those participants after the film were asked how far were the cars going when they hit, or collided, or bumped, contacted, or smashed into each other. So, they were asked one of those 5 words. They were either asked hit, collided, bumped, contacted, or smashed, not all, just one of them. And what the results ended up showing was that participants who were given the verb smashed or collided ended up estimating the highest speed. So people who were asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other gave a much higher estimate of how fast the cars were going than people who were asked, for example, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. This is essentially an example of response bias explanation, which is when the actual memory of the event has not changed, but participants change how they answer. So because of the way that the question was phrased, it caused the participant to change the answer to a certain question even though the actual accuracy of memory was not affected. Now, following the previous part, a week later the participants were asked to come back. They were then asked, did you see any broken glass? So when the cars hit each other, did you see any broken glass? Now, participants who had the word smashed in their question said 32%. Participants who said the word hit had 14%, and participants who had the word control, or who were given a control question that didn't include any of those words, said 12%. So 12% of the participants said that there was broken glass. Essentially, what this shows is that substitution explanation is at play, which essentially means that leading questions do in fact change the accuracy of memory, and therefore, within the context of a formal investigation, leading questions do have the ability to change the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. Now we're going to be moving on to the strengths and evaluations of the theory. One of the most obvious strengths of this would be real-life application. So that study showed us that the leading questions do in fact change the accuracy of recall of memory. And therefore, as a result, formal investigations and interviews within the police now use a cognitive interview technique, which is shown to improve the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. This is beneficial for society because it means that criminals get convicted, and it means that, as a result, society is a much safer place. We will be going into more detail as to what exactly the cognitive interview is in a later video, but for now, just know that one of the methods in a cognitive interview is that you should not ask leading questions. So instead of asking, was a criminal wearing a brown tie, you should ask, what colour tie was a criminal wearing, or like something that doesn't suggest or imply a certain answer. We will be going into more detail about different steps within the cognitive interview technique, but for now, this is what you need as a strength for leading questions and how they affect the process of investigation. However, just as there are strengths, there are also weaknesses to the theory. So, another study found that age groups have an own age bias. This means that they tend to be more accurate when identifying people of their own age group. So, for example, if I was being asked to recall an event, I would be more accurate when I am trying to recall information about people my own age than people who are either much older or much younger than me. They also found that younger people are more accurate than older people. This would be a little bit easier to remember. Younger people generally tend to have better memory than older people, so therefore, when recalling certain events or information, it would be more accurate. This shows that the accuracy of eyewitness testimony is affected by individual differences rather than just leading questions. So, what you could say as a link for this pure paragraph is that, therefore, the explanation of leading questions is a reason for the accuracy of eyewitness testimony being affected. That on its own is not a good enough explanation. It's not a complete explanation because it doesn't take into account individual differences that research has shown to also have affected eyewitness testimony. Another weakness of this theory would be that the research used to support it uses artificial tasks. So, if you remember, the participants were shown a film of a car crash. However, this is not similar to real life. In real life, we see car crashes in person, and it would be quite different to a film. There's a lot more damage done, or for example, you might see more broken glass than you would in a film. Things are more detailed. Therefore, the results and the conclusion from that specific study does not really tell us very much about how leading questions affect eyewitness testimony in real life. It tells us about how it works within the context of watching a film, but we aren't necessarily able to accurately extrapolate that to a real life scenario. So that is something that you need to keep in mind when referring to this theory as a specific type of factor that affects eyewitness testimony in real life. Now, that covers the AO1 and the AO3 that you need to know for this specific topic. And while these videos are a great way to improve your understanding, I'm also in the process of making a website that has detailed revision notes and summaries to help you save time and secure those top grades. You'll find loads of different things from sample essays that score top marks and bonus evaluations to help you stay ahead. It's all available via the website Orbit of the Mind, so please stay tuned to know when the website is coming out and when the resources are available. Also, if you would like to explore topics about psychology beyond the curriculum, if you're interested in psychological topics outside of the classroom, do give a look at our sister channel called The Mystic Mind. You can find it on the homepage for this channel. It essentially covers loads of different topics from love and attachment styles to supernatural events to myths about psychology and loads of different topics like that that aren't really covered in the curriculum but are still really interesting to learn about and nevertheless can solidify your understanding of topics that are on the curriculum. So if you would be interested in that, do check that out. Okay, now just to solidify your understanding, we're going to be doing some exam practice. So try doing this question, either plan it out or if you're feeling like it, try writing out the full answer for a 12 marker or an 8 marker. So the question is outline and evaluate research into the effects of leading questions and the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. So remember it says outline and evaluate research. So you need to talk about the research that we talked about, key terms, as well as the evaluations for it. It does say evaluate the research, so make sure that you're linking that back to the question in your answer. Okay, so obviously there are a lot more points that you could have added. You might have known some extra information outside this video that you could have added in your answer. But some of the things that you could have mentioned are the study that we talked about, so Loftus and Palmer. You could talk about the response bias, explanation, so question wording actually distorts the memory. You can talk about the specific questions that were in it. So, did you see any broken glass? There's also a separate study that asked if they saw a broken headlight. And then also just making sure that you've moved on to the AO3, so talking about real life application in terms of the cognitive interview, talking about how there's alternative explanations, making the current explanation incomplete, and also making sure that you refer to the fact that it's an artificial task and therefore has low external validity because it doesn't necessarily reflect real life results. So that covers everything, and that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please do like and subscribe, and if you have any feedback for us, or if you want to let us know what kind of things you want to see in the future, what went well, what could have been better, please do let us know in the comments. We're always looking to improve, and thank you for watching. Happy revision.